Hello and welcome, I'm Highsea, and this is the Katchup. That little extra bit of Toku flavor where I catch up on series and let you know my first impressions. And it feels really good to finally catch in on everybody's recommendation and catch up on Kamen Rider Build Episodes 1 through 10. Okay, first things first, in catch-up videos, there's no way for me to talk about them without at least giving minor spoilers to somewhat major spoilers, especially when we start talking about build henshin forms or possible twists, especially in build since there's so many of them. So just be warned, I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum, but watch at your own risk. Starting with the first impressions, I'm really impressed with the amount of world building they were able to do inside of just the first episode alone. You're introduced to a lot in both elements of the world and the characters that inhabit it. You learn enough to know their base traits while still leaving enough mystery to make you wonder and excited to see how the show's going to grow. The backdrop of Pandora's box and Japan being divided up by the Skywall makes for a really interesting multi-layered motivation for the show and gives the world a lot of depth to play around with inside of its story structure. As for main characters, Cento really straddles the line for me when it comes to main protagonists and their relation to comic relief. The metaphoric erection that his hair makes for science, power, and discovery is really silly, but does genuinely make me laugh most of the time. And within the 10 episodes I watched, there's just enough comic relief to bring enough levity to the super serious moments the show has. And that's probably Build's biggest strength. If I had to divide it up, I would say it's 2 parts serious and 1 part comic relief, which is really the margins I usually prefer inside of Toku shows. Build's henshin. Now, I don't know if this is an unpopular first opinion or not, but when I first saw the full bottles and build driver, I wasn't super impressed. The crank mechanism on the build driver kind of bothered me in the previews. If I compare it to something like the double driver, it just seems like it takes too long to use. Since double will just activate the memories and slam it into the driver and transform, and it's harder for me to imagine build being able to do the same thing by shaking a bottle and then cranking it into action. But I do understand that this is kind of more of a nitpick, and it's really only something that bothered me at first, and as the show progressed, he tended to get faster with the transformations and it wasn't something I really thought about. And the crank on the build driver does work to emphasize the experimental industrial themes of the show. So I'm used to it now, and it really only bothers me if I think about it for too long. Build suit design. From the first time I saw the scans of Rabbit Tank, I initially fell in love with it. It just screams classic Kamen Rider to me. The incorporation of 2 elements, one organic and one mechanical, really helps to hammer home the nature and technology aspects of the show. When it comes to Build's other forms, it can be a little hit or miss with me. For instance, it's hard for me to get into a vacuum being incorporated into a henshin form. That said, it never actually bothers me while watching the show, and it's another thing that kind of exists on the level of nitpick. On the other hand, Hawk Gatling has been maybe my favorite henshin so far, and the best match system still has me wondering what transformations are coming up. Let's talk about Banjo. As a counterpart to Cento, I absolutely love Banjo. Part of me wants to call him a secondary character, and where I'm at, he still has a low hazard level and can't transform. But I think he balances out the show perfectly. He comes from it from a different angle, but still has very similar motivations to Cento. His untransformed fight scenes have been some of my favorite scenes so far in the show. You can really feel how he's jealous and craves Cento's power to transform. Best showcased by a scene where he grabs Cento's driver, tries to use it, and ends up failing the henshin and hurting himself. This all works really well to help bring in and build up his character, and I can't wait to see where it's going. By the end of episode 10, this story has taken so many twists and turns, I just can't wait to see what happens next. The world is just fully realized and has so many interesting facets to it. The drama elements are always fantastical, but it always brings it back to having a really human core to it. For example, in episode 3, there's a character who can clear Banjo of his crimes, but he's left amnesic. He sits on the floor in front of his wife and very young daughter, unable to remember what his relation to them was. His daughter doesn't understand what's going on, and she just gets more and more upset the longer he can't remember her. Brienne happened to walk into the room while the scene was going on as the kid's getting more and more upset, and she's completely divorced from the context of the show, so all she has is the scene, and just on the basis and easy to relate to nature of it, it really drives it home and it really leaves an emotional impact. It's an emotional scene. So when the comedic bits come up, it really helps to take that sharp edge off of what is sometimes really emotionally gut-wrenching scenes. And then there are the mysterious bad guys. I like the Smash monsters enough, but they're really just fodder to get in the way of what's the real interesting character arcs of who are these guys. Where I'm at in the show, it's told me the identity of Bloodstalk, but I'm still not quite believing that. But previous to watching the show, I constantly had Toku Twitter freaking out and talking about how awesome Bloodstalk was. And I get it, Bloodstalk is awesome. He's a complete wild card. You never know what side he's on. You never know what twists he's going to pull or which way he's going to throw a situation. Sometimes he helps, sometimes he stands in the way, and you just can never predict where he's going to go. Sometimes he just toys with Cento and Banjo, but the suit actor is so charismatic that you just can't help but absolutely fall in love with the character. Night Rogue is also cool, but he seems a little more predictable. He seems like kind of more of a clear-cut character projection. And individually, the two feel like they're a real competition to beat, but together they feel borderline impossible for the current standings of build. I always love rider-on-rider fights, and with these two in the mix, it really just feels like, you know, ever since they've fully been introduced, that's all I'm really getting. As for the things I'm wondering about, what is the relationship with Katsuragi and Cento? There's a moment where you see that Katsuragi and Cento both really love the same food, and the way it's shot and the way the information's told you, I have to believe it's there for a reason. There's also the mystery of, is Katsuragi dead? Now, I've been told who he is, but I don't know that I believe that. So far I've been told he's Bloodstalk, but there's part of me that's just still a little questioning. Because the way Katsuragi interacts and the way Bloodstalk interacts just never seem like the same person to me. It just never really meshes. So I'm waiting for that flip of being like, haha, just gotcha, he's actually this guy over here, or he's dead. And also the first questions that still haven't been answered, which is why does Cento doesn't have any memory, what his relation to Katsuragi was, why Banjo was set up for his murder. All of those mysteries I'm still fully interested in getting a real answer for. By the end of episode 10, Jintoku is now in charge of the country. Cento is completely down and out and without his full bottles. And I honestly have no idea where we're going from here. All I can say is I'm really excited to watch more build. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Build 1 through 10. I hope to do another one of these videos once I reach 11 through 20. But until then, I'm Highsea and this is the Katchup. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.